Hey guys, it's Nick with Urban Farm Boys. I'm really excited about today's video. I've been wanting to do it forever. Today I'm going to do a comprehensive tutorial on how to do a granny square temperature blanket. I started my own granny square temperature blanket in January of this year. As of the date of filming, it's December 12th, so I am almost done with my blanket. And I've had so much fun with it all year long. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek at the end of the video, and I'm also going to talk to you about my plans for my 2025 temperature blanket, because yes, I'm doing this for a second year in a row. But my goal today was to give you guys a complete start to finish how-to, everything from planning to mapping it out to figuring out what yarns to use, and I'll show you a few different options for things you can do. I'm going to leave timestamps below so you can skip around as needed, and if you're making a blanket you might want to reference different areas. But we are going to get started and cover every single thing you would ever need to know to make a granny square temperature blanket. My goal with this tutorial is to provide a new idea for experienced crocheters, maybe somebody who's done temperature blankets in a more traditional way and wants to try something different. But I also hope that this will be a perfect tutorial for even a beginner crocheter, maybe even somebody who's never really crocheted before. I'm going to give you guys all the tips and tools that you need, and I have an argument that if you're learning to crochet, the granny square might be the easiest and best way to get into crocheting. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. For now, let's dive in. So we'll start with the basics. You might be a brand new crocheter, or maybe you're experienced but you've never done a temperature blanket, or maybe you want to try something different, because I don't see a ton of people doing granny square temperature blankets. So let's start from the beginning. What the heck is a temperature blanket? The concept of a temperature blanket is pretty straightforward. It sort of is what it sounds like. It's the creation of a blanket that reflects the temperatures where you live, where you've been. There's a million different things you can do with it, but kind of the standard is that people will choose a location and a year, oftentimes January 1st until December 31st, but you can customize it however you like. And you'll look at the daily temperature every single day of the year where you live, and you will convert that into yarn. People do all sorts of really cool things with their temperature blankets. I'll insert some photos here of some inspiration pictures I've seen. You can customize your location, your year, your yarn size, all of your colors. You can do something traditional that's sort of, rainbow colors, or things that correspond in a logical way to the temperatures around us. Or you can do something completely different and do grayscale or do colors you really like. I'm going to show you several examples now of different things you can do. But the idea is the same. You choose a time period, which is typically a year, and commonly January to December, but a lot of people will do a significant year in their lives, or the first year of their child's life, or the first year of their marriage. Choose a year that's important to you. Or if you're like me, I learned about this in about the end of November last year. January 1st is coming up. It's a great time to start planning for kind of the traditional January to December temperature blanket. The possibilities are endless when it comes to how do you want to make your temperature blanket. You can do any type of stitch you want, any size, any length. It can be customized in a million ways. And if you've never heard of this before, just look for the hashtag temperature blanket on Instagram, or there's a bunch of Facebook groups too. Just search for crochet temperature blanket. There's like 100 different Facebook groups, and you can get all kinds of ideas and inspiration. So the possibilities are endless. If you're watching this video, it's going to be about granny squares, and maybe that's why you're here. Or maybe this is going to provide you with some idea you never thought of before. Before we dive too much into how to plan and map out this blanket, if you're brand new, you might even be saying, what the heck is a granny square? And that's fair. That's a good question. I didn't know until about a year ago. So I have a whole bunch of things to show you guys here. But a granny square this is a very kind of traditional looking granny square. Something like this. These are, rather than doing, a crochet project in rows that go back and forth, it's a project that starts in the beginning and then you work in rounds moving out from the center. So you can see really clearly here, each round is a different color. And something like this is kind of the standard vintagey traditional granny square. So that's what this is. I am going to link below a tutorial where I show you guys how I do granny squares. This is sort of how I got started about a year ago with crochet. Was I learned about granny squares and made hundreds of them. So I'll link a video below if you want to learn exactly how to make a granny square. But there's a ton of different things you can do with the foundation of granny squares. You can do all one color. You don't have to change colors. You can do solid squares. I have another solid one here. If you don't want to change colors too often, you could buy a colored yarn, a multicolored yarn. I have a few examples here. This is a Karen Blossom Cakes, and I did a couple of tester squares using this yarn where I just did several rounds with this guy and then just did a white border. You don't even have to do a white border, but that'll give you, I mean, I think I made 2 of these and they look completely different from each other, so it depends on the yarn you buy. And then you can do anything you want. I have this cotton yarn that I bought, Karen Cotton Cakes, where the color transition is much slower than with this guy. You can even see that, how quickly the colors transition comparing one to the other. With this guy, I did some samples and I found that I could get many different colored granny squares, but all of the rounds would be like one solid color. So you can have the rainbow of colors if you make a bunch of granny squares. So you can do kind of whatever you want. You can also use different sized yarns. So I made some larger squares using a much thicker yarn. I had these 3 colors and I made 3 different squares where I just alternated which color I started with. And I never did anything with these squares, but I still like the concept. I'm gonna keep going with this one of these days and make, I don't know, a blanket or something with them. But you see that even if you have just 3 colors of yarn, you have potentially 3 very different looking squares. You can also do rectangles, which I will link also in my video. I'm going to talk about how to do a granny rectangle. This was one that I did with 2 different colored yarns, and you can customize your rectangle in any size you want. So super long and skinny rectangle, something that's a little bit closer to a square shape, you can do whatever you want. Or one of my most popular videos was this continuous granny square that I did with this really fun rainbow colored yarn from Ice Yarns. I will link that video below as well. This is what I have left of the yarn. It's a really fun, pretty yarn, but it's pretty thin. I will link everything in the description that I talk about in this entire video, so I won't say that every single time. But I made this square. I was going to turn this into an entire giant blanket, but then I realized how thin the yarn is. It was going to take me an eternity, and I was too excited about different projects. So I think I'm going to turn this probably into like an accent pillow, like a cushion cover. But I hope that shows you guys there are a ton of different things you can do once you've mastered the foundation of how to make the granny square. Okay, so if you've never made one before, check the description for the link to my tutorial. If you like the idea of doing a temperature blanket in granny square format, there's 2 or 3 pretty standard variations that you can do, and I'll show you those 3 now, and then we'll kind of dive backward into how do you do this, how do you map it out, how do you plan it. But I'll show you guys what I've been doing all year long. Okay, so there's kind of 2 schools of thought with your granny square. When you're looking at the daily temperatures, you can either choose, well, you can choose whatever you want. You can choose the high temperature of the day, which is what I did. You can choose the average temperature, which is fine also, no problem. Or some people like to do the high and the low of the day and have a square with 2 colors. The other day decided to try to do this tiny little granny square with embroidery floss. I don't know why, I was just curious. I used a 2.25 millimeter crochet hook, and I have no idea why, but it was fun. But this is an example where you could use two colors and do one color for the low of the day and one color of the high, and then do a border or whatever you want to do. We'll talk about all the options a little bit later on. But you could do something like that, or you could just choose, you know, the high of the day or the average, whatever you want to do, and do something solid. The reason it looks kind of weird is because this is actually two squares. But you could do a solid color for your temperature of the day, and then a border in kind of whatever color you want. And then do one of those for every day. Or you can do what I did this year in 2024, which is one big square for every month of the year, so that by the end of the year I'm going to have a blanket that has 12 separate squares. I've already begun joining my blanket, all my squares together, because we're nearly at the end of the year. So I can't show you each individual month, although I will have a video in the description where you can look at that if you'd like. But I can show you a couple of examples. This is December, so today is December 12th. Last night I did December 11th. So this is 11 rounds with the temperatures where I'm at in December. I live in New York, by the way, just outside New York City. And I'm going to go backward and talk to you guys about the colors and all of that in a little bit. But the idea is when you start your square, right, you start in the middle with your first little round, and that's the first of the month. And then the next round is the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth, and you keep going until you have 30 rounds, or 31, whatever you want to do. What I did, and I'll talk more about that, is I decided for simplicity's sake, because not every day, not every month has the same number of days, that I was going to do 30 rounds per square, period. First 30 days of every month. This year was a leap year. February had 29 days. January has 31. So what I did this year was I took the temperature for January 31st, started February with that, so that was kind of like the first day of February, and then I had 29 more days, and it worked out perfectly. You can do whatever you like. You could also do borders to, you know, take into account that each month has different days, whatever you want to do. Anyway, this is December so far, and I can't believe that I have 18 more days and then I'm done. But I also have September and October here, so I'll show you what a complete square looks like, and it'll also show you how things can look so different throughout the year. So this is my September square, and again, I'll back up and tell you all about it. But this is what one square looks like with 30 rounds. So that was September. And then I also have October here. I'll show you October because it looks very different from September. So this is my October square. It looks a little psychedelic. But this is what I chose to do. So that for 2024, I did one big square for each month of the year. You can connect them later however you want. I'm doing 3 months with 4 rows of 3 months. It's going to be a real big blanket, and I'll show you and talk to you about that a little bit later too. So whatever interests you, you might want to do something like this, which is what I did. Or you might want to do something like, let me just do one square for each day and connect all of them. And then they can be whatever size you want. You could have, this one has 1, 2, 3 rounds and a border. Or this one has 2 rounds and a border and much thinner yarn. In comparison here, these guys with a much thicker yarn have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rounds. So this is, let me show you the difference. This is a 4 round square. This is a 6 round square with much thicker yarn, and look at the size difference. So you can customize it exactly how you want. Use the yarn you like. Just take in consideration that it's going to be a big blanket, so you might want to not do an entire year-long project with a super thick yarn. So now we've covered what I did for 2024. Let's back it up a step. Now you know what a temperature blanket is. You know what a granny square temperature blanket could be. Where do you even begin? So let's start there. Okay, so how the heck do you plan out this giant year-long project? Don't worry, I'm going to take you through everything you need to know. The first thing you're going to need to know is what is my time frame that I want to do my temperature blanket for? And the second thing you need to know is your location. So I'm going to show you what I did this year in 2024. So I live just outside New York City, and the year is 2024. You can also choose the day you were born. Maybe you were born in, I don't know, Davenport, Iowa in 1974, and you want to commemorate that with a temperature blanket from then. So you've got to choose your year and your location. If you guys are watching this and you're planning ahead for this year and it hasn't started yet, January 1st hasn't arrived, well, great. You can order your supplies, you can make out a plan, and then you can just start and look at the temperature data every day as they come. But I'm going to show you a couple of the resources I use where you can look at the daily temperatures and you can pull in historic temperatures. So I'm going to move myself over to my iPad here, and let's say that you're watching this in the beginning of the year, March, February, whatever, and you're like, oh, this is great, I want to do this year. But the beginning of the year has already passed. So let's just take a look here. There's a ton of weather resources. This is for the US, but it actually might do international as well. I'll find out. Let's just test it. Let's say London. Yeah. Okay, so this should work for anywhere in the globe. I use Weather Underground. It's wunderground.com. So let's start by punching in our location. So I'm going to write New York City. Okay, you choose your location. Nope, it still wants to tell us about London, Ontario. Okay, so New York City. Today, it's cold, it's 36 degrees, and this is your standard weather. This is where you could go and look every day. But we want to look at history. So this will tell you any day you want to look up. It'll tell you a week or it'll tell you a month. So for example, if we missed the beginning of the year but we want to, we can look for monthly data and we can just start at the beginning. So we'll say, what the heck was going on in January? Because I don't remember. So this will give you everything that happened in January, and if you scroll down, here's all your data for the whole month. What I look at, it's a lot of numbers, but what I look at is simply the date and the max. So if you wanted to backtrack or do any location, any year, you've got the temperature every day. You can do your max, your minimum if you want, or your average right there. I don't care about any of the other columns. All I've looked at is what was the max temperature each day. And you can look by month. It's not going to give you the whole year, but you can go month by month, and we don't need to worry about a whole year when we have to do something each day with crochet. So Weather Underground, with your location and your time period, you're good to go. Let's say that, like I said, maybe you, let's try London again. Let's say you got married in London, not Ontario. No offense, but that's not what I was looking for. And you want to see what was happening, the year of your wedding. So let's try to pull up a month. Let's just say you got married in June of, I don't know how far back we can go. I don't know if anyone alive today got married in 1930. But let's say you got married in June of 1975. And you want to start there and document that first year. You might need a different website. Sorry guys. Let's see if we can go more recent. I don't know how far back this data goes. Not even to 95. That was some time ago though, I forget. Let's say you got married in 2010. Oh, yep, 2010 works. So look at that. London, England, 2010. Find whatever, if you live somewhere else, you might know a better website for your own country, but this will show you the temperatures in June of 2010 in London. So I don't know how far back it goes, but find the website. There's a million of them. You can find your historic data and start there. Okay, makes sense? So now you know where to find temperatures in any location, essentially any location. But now it's time to plan out the blanket, and you're like, I don't even know. I don't know what colors, I don't know how many different yarns, where do I even begin? So let's talk about how to map out a plan for your temperature blanket. This is the fun part, the creative part, where you get to choose whatever you want to do. So you get to pick whatever yarn you like, you get to pick whatever colors you want, you can get to pick different temperature ranges. It's completely up to you. I started crocheting like a maniac in about November of last year, so just over a year ago. And I had, when I was doing all of those standard granny squares, I had gone to my local Michael's and I had bought a ton of this Loops and Threads soft classic acrylic yarn. This is kind of like the proprietary brand of Michael's, I believe. And it's affordable. It's like a 4 worsted weight acrylic yarn. It's cheap, easy. And I had bought a bunch of it to do all sorts of different granny squares. So I had this. And then when I decided I wanted to do a temperature blanket, I didn't want to buy a ton of new yarns, mainly because I didn't know if I would follow through with an entire year-long project. So I thought, let me just use what I have. So if you have a bunch of yarn at home already, go and look and see what you have. It's a good idea that they're all the same brand or type, or at least similar sizes. You don't want a bunch of fluctuation. You could, but I wouldn't recommend that. This is what I had, was a ton of this Loops and Threads soft classic acrylic. Again, the world is your oyster. While you're thinking about what yarn you want to use, you also want to think about the temperature, the spectrum of temperature ranges where you live. So I used to live in Austin, Texas. It's real hot there for a lot of the year and the temperature doesn't fluctuate very much. Now we live in New York, just north of New York City, and we get very cold winters and pretty hot summers, so there's a much bigger fluctuation in there. Austin, Texas temperatures in July and August might fluctuate between 97 and 104 for months, which doesn't make a very interesting blanket, maybe, but there's ways to work around that, which I'll talk to you about shortly. Here in New York, there's a much bigger fluctuation. So you might want to start by saying, well, what are the ranges of temperatures where I live, or where I used to live, or where my marriage took place, or whatever you want to do. So I'll show you back over here. One place where I found that was weatherspark.com, but if you just search for average temperatures and a location, and maybe monthly or something, just search around, it'll show you your averages. So this, I just searched for New York City, and this gives you, there's so many ads everywhere. This gives you a pretty good idea of what your temperatures look like throughout the year. So, and then there's a little chart here too, if you don't like the graph. So if we just look at maybe average temperatures, which is in the middle, you could go by that for your averages if you want. I went with the high. So I can see that the range, the scope of my temperatures here are going to be somewhere around, you know, maybe as cold as 29, but highs of 40 in January, to, you know, mid 80s in July. So that's a pretty significant range, 40, 50 degree temperature range. If you live in maybe San Diego, you might only get like a 20 degree fluctuation throughout the year. Or if you live like where my family lives in Denmark, my dad lives in Denmark, it doesn't get that warm in the summer, and it doesn't get that cold in the winter either. So it's between, I don't know, 40 Fahrenheit and 70 Fahrenheit most of the year. So for me, in New York, we get below freezing and we get, you know, hot, nearing maybe 100 degrees at the max in the summers up here. So I had a pretty big range. Okay, so find out, if you don't have any idea, find a website that will show you kind of what you're looking at for the year. If it's more like a flat line where it's the same temperature every day, there's ways to tweak that. Okay, so how the heck do you plan this out? Once you've got all this information, where do you even begin? What you need to do, once you've got all of this information, is map out what yarn am I using, what colors am I using, and what are my temperature ranges for each color. Okay, based on kind of how much your temperatures fluctuate where you live. So I'm going to show you guys this little chart, which has been near my person every day all year. And it's laminated, and I'm a geek, and I like lists and organization. So this is what I did. But I chose what I was going to do, and then I just made the simplest little chart in Word. So I looked at my ranges, and I kind of determined I'm going to need to find yarn to represent temperatures that are below freezing, all the way up to maybe 100 degrees. So in Fahrenheit, so that's, you know, 60, 70 plus degree range. I looked at all of my yarns, and in fairness, I did buy some more once I decided I wanted to use the Soft Classic acrylic by Loops and Threads. I looked at what I had, what was available, and I settled on kind of a standard-ish temperature range. So this is from the coldest temperatures. I went over here toward warmer temperatures. So this is kind of classic temperature range colors, but do whatever you want. Like I said, you might just want to use all shades of purple because it's your favorite, or you might want to do grayscale, or you might want to do colors you really like that have nothing to do with, you know, corresponding temperatures. Pick the yarn you like, and then we'll work on mapping it out. What I did in my case was I broke up, you know, temperatures from freezing to 100 degrees in 6-degree increments. So I just put temperature blanket, I wrote the yarn that I was using, and I also wrote that I was using a 6mm crochet hook, and I'll talk about hooks in a little bit. But I broke up those ranges, and you just kind of play around with that. You can use as many yarns as you want. I don't even know how many colors I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 colors. Spoiler alert, I never used this dark deep red a single time. It was never over 100 degrees here. But this was what I wanted to use. I wanted a fairly decent variety of colors, and these are what I had. They're also a little bit muted colors. None of them are super vibrant, which I kind of liked. So I just played around with it, and I determined, you know, I'm going to do one color for any temperature below freezing in Fahrenheit. 33 to 38 will be this color. 39 to 44 will be this color. You can play around with it. If you want to use 30 colors, you might have to have smaller temperature ranges. If you only want 5 colors, bigger ranges. This is where you get to be creative and play around. Okay? Choose your yarn, choose your ranges, play around with it, change things up, think about it, and honestly, if you have an entire year to work on a blanket, you can make changes as you go. For example, these 2 colors here, actually these 3 colors here, I changed after I started. I started in January over here with these colors, but once I got closer to needing these colors, I didn't like the ones I had chosen initially. None of these are actually the names given by Loops and Threads. None of these are what these 3 are. I changed them out because I had time. You got the whole year to figure things out. I don't particularly like this red color either, so I'm kind of glad I didn't end up using it. But make your chart. So this is just a piece of printer paper, and I have a laminator at home, so I laminated it, and then I hole punched it and just did little tassels on my paper. and this has worked for me all year. If you don't have a laminator, don't go out and buy one. I've seen people do this on cardboard. Just get a pen or a marker and write on cardboard. You can punch through the cardboard, and a lot of people do that. We just have a laminator because we're both eternal students, and so we have a bunch of office supplies. But this was the chart that I used, and it worked for me. So this is now, before you start making your blanket, this is the fun period. You get to play around. If you're using yarns you already have, that's fun. You can get rid of them. Just know you're going to use a lot of yarn, so you want to make sure you can access more of it if you need. Or if you're going to go out and buy more yarn, that's fun too. So this is the fun part, the creative part, right? This is what I did for 2024. I've been staring at these colors all year long. At the end of the video, I'll tell you what I would like to do differently for next year. But I think overall, I have no complaints. I kind of committed to the cause, to using these yarns. All of these are standard, easily accessible colors. They're not always available at all times in my local Michaels, but they're always available online if I need to order them online. I had no idea how much yarn I would use, so I had 1 or 2 skeins maybe of each, and then as I went throughout the year I just purchased more. So I would sort of recommend picking yarns that you can easily get more as you need it, rather than trying to estimate how much you'll need. Who knows? Each month came as a surprise to me. Every day I was looking at temperatures, and you may think you're going to need a bunch of one color temperature range, and then that doesn't end up happening. So it's a little pro tip. Order a little bit, but make sure you can get more later. Okay? Another small aside, even if you're new to crocheting or experienced, you may or may not know that yarn is made in batches, and they're given a dye lot number, meaning like all of the yarn was dyed with this type of dye, so they should all look the same. You can typically find that right on the skein. This tells me the name of the color and then the dye lot. If you're buying yarns, it's a good idea to try to buy all of the same dye lot so that they all match. Here's the thing though, I really didn't care. This was a brand new project for me as a new crocheter. I wasn't worried about it. I had this temperature, this color, which represents 33 to 38 degrees, and I was using it at the beginning of the year, and I knew I would need more at the end of the year, like now when it's cold again. This is actually the color I've been using most in December. I wasn't worried about if the colors didn't match perfectly, because it was new. It was an experiment for me. I wasn't worried. And I did have maybe one color, I can't remember which one. I think it actually was this ginger color. I used a lot of this in the summer. And I did end up buying some that had, later in the year, that had a slightly different dye lot. And you can just see the tiniest, no one would notice it but me, because I have spent so many days staring at this color. Just slight variation doesn't bother me in the least, not even 1%. If that does bother you, you might need to plan ahead. If you have the resources to buy a ton of all your colors and just be happy with maybe having a bunch of excess later on, fine, do that. Just something to keep in mind. We've gone through the basic, we've gone through the concepts, we've looked at how to research your temperatures, we've talked about creating a chart, so you've kind of got everything you need now to get started. The final thing you're going to have to decide if you're doing a granny square blanket is, am I going to do one square for every day, or am I going to do, I can't reach, am I going to do, oh my gosh, I have a mess of squares here, or am I going to do one big square for every month? I have to say, I saw that, I didn't come up with this idea, other people have done it, but I don't see a lot of people doing this idea, so I thought it was pretty fun. And if you are enjoying this video, you can subscribe to the channel and look at prior videos. I've posted essentially every single month, like a video about everything I crocheted this month, and I always show my monthly progress. And I've gotten a ton of positive feedback because a lot of people have said, oh, I haven't really seen a temperature blanket done that way before. So you do you. Whatever you decide, whether it's a giant square for each month or a square for each day, you're gonna have a lot of squares. You wanna keep yourself organized. For me, it's pretty easy because every month has looked significantly different. If you're gonna do a square for each day, you're gonna have to figure out how to keep them organized so that they don't all get mixed up. That'll be a headache if you have no idea what day this square is supposed to represent. Regardless, you're making a bunch of squares and you're gonna have to connect them. In my tutorial video, I'm showing you how I connect my squares, but there's a bunch of different ways. So once you have mastered how to do a granny square, you can search on YouTube for a million different ways to connect squares and connect them however you like. So if you're doing, smaller squares, one for each day, as long as you keep them organized, you can make, do 2 months worth of squares and connect them later, or connect them all at the end of the year. Whatever you want to do. You don't have to worry about that too much right now to begin with. What I did was created a square for every month, and then I found what's sort of known as a join as you go method, which I really liked. I'm going to link the video below, and I think it's an excellent way to join your squares if you're doing one for each month. It might be a little bit more tedious if you're doing one for each day, but I'll link below the video that I used to join all of my squares, and it's upstairs now, but I'll show you. I'll give you a little sneak peek here at the end of the video. You have to figure out how you're going to join them. So I had, for example, I think this is October. No, this is November. This is done, but I knew at the end I was going to join each, or I should say complete each square by doing a white border. I have an off-white color for the border. And in doing that, I am able to do like a join as you go method because these don't have their final round yet. So I will show you how to do that, or I will link that video, like I said, below, the tutorial that I followed, and I've been able to join them all row by row. So what I have upstairs completed is January through September, and it's a big blanket. I have to completely finish December before I can join my last 3 months, just by nature of the tutorial. Don't worry about that right now at all. It's just how that tutorial works. I need to complete this month before I can finish my final row of connecting them all. But you can do whatever you want, okay? The reason I have this little sample here is because you can also join squares literally as you go. So I made one square in this pink. I put on a gray border, and that square was complete, okay? And then I started a new square in the yellow, and once I started its gray border, you can actually connect it on one side to another square. You can actually connect it on as many sides as you need to. So again, that joining technique will be in my tutorial video. You don't need to worry about that today. If you want to join each day as you go, you're gonna have to learn this method in addition to learning your granny square method, but don't worry too much about that now. Just practice. Just get some yarn and get a crochet hook and start practicing and make a million granny squares and watch a bunch of tutorials and see what you like, okay? If you want to start it out by doing one square for each day and you're overwhelmed by figuring out how am I going to join them, don't be. Forget about it. You have a whole year to figure it out. Just get started. So just start making something like this for the month, and each day it'll get a little bit bigger. Or make a square every day. Do whatever you want. You have the entire year to figure out how you want to join them. And if you're a new crocheter, you probably don't even know yet. There's a million ways, so don't even worry. Just get your yarn out and get started. Don't be overwhelmed by this project because you have the entire year. The planning is kind of the fun part, and that can seem overwhelming, but it's really not. Once you get to it, it's actually pretty fun. And then the construction, you got the whole year, so don't panic. If you're enjoying this video and you find it helpful, please consider giving the video a like, a thumbs up, and subscribing to the channel. I have a ton of other crochet related content and a whole bunch of non-crochet related content. And trust me when I say this video is literally a year in the making, so it would really help if you would give it a thumbs up, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. I want to hear all of your ideas. I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can, and this is a community, so anybody can answer potentially a question you might have as you're planning this out. So please consider doing that. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about before I show you, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of my blanket, and I will be doing a complete reveal and kind of a summary of the entire year in a separate video. It's not done yet because we're not done with the year yet, so that'll be coming in the next few weeks. But the last thing I want to show you is I have spent my entire year with this chart and this yarn, and I like it, and it's been fun. I learned a lot. I feel like I am a granny square master after this year. If there's anything I can do, it's make a granny square. But you know, there's a few things that I've learned along the way, which is you never know what your temperatures are going to be every month and how your square is going to turn out. And these squares are real interesting. They're not always beautiful by any means. Some of them are louder than others. My summer months are all kind of similar colors because it's pretty consistently warm in the summer. But you never know what your square is going to look like if you do this, you know, one square per month. And that's half the fun. And I'm going to tell you what. I may have not made the world's best color choices. They don't exactly match all the time with each other, but I'm gonna love this blanket forever because it was a year-long commitment, a new idea, and a really fun project. I will forever be obsessed with this blanket. Maybe I'll be buried in it. I actually don't want to be buried in it. I want to be cremated, and I don't want it to be burned. So I'll have to figure out where to donate it. Probably to nobody in my family because most people think it's hideous, but I don't care. So maybe one of you can inherit it when I'm gone. But anyway, the point there that turned really morbid really quickly is I've spent a long time with this yarn. I told myself I wasn't going to do a 2025 temperature blanket. And then I'm always looking online at different ideas and watching YouTube videos and scrolling through Facebook and Reddit, and I got struck by inspiration, and I'm doing it again. I'm doing it again for 2025. I have everything mapped out. So I'm going to show you. This is my reveal. People have been asking what I'm going to do for 2025, and I'm going to show you right now. Same process I'm doing 2025 for where I live. But I wanted to change it up. I wanted to change up the yarns. I wanted to not use loops and threads, soft classic acrylic, because I've stared at them for an entire year. And these, like I mentioned, these are fairly muted colors. Right? There's nothing wrong with them. They're pretty. I like them. But I wanted to do something different. So I was looking at some inspiration, and I really liked the look of people who do one granny square per day instead of an entire month in one square. And this blanket, I'll show you a little sneak peek, it's going to be massive. It's going to be something like 7 feet across by 9 feet long. It's officially going to be the biggest blanket I've ever made. And if I had known that when I started, I would have been really overwhelmed by the idea. But I had the whole year to do it. But it's a very big blanket. It's bigger than a king-size bed blanket. So I wanted to do something with yarn that was a little thinner. I like thick and bulky yarns, but I wanted to maybe do something a little bit thinner and change it up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a daily square, one square for every day, and I'm going to join them. And let me show you what we're doing. If you are a quick one here, you may have noticed that I referenced these two squares many times. It's because these are samples for what I'm going to do for 2025. I wanted bright colors. I wanted fun colors. I'm not following a traditional like temperature palette. I wanted colors that I think are fun. And instead of a white border or an off-white border, this actually is the yarn I'm using for the border. I don't know how well you can see, but it's kind of an off-white color. Instead of that, I wanted gray. So I wanted kind of bright sort of neons, not all neons, but bright colors, colors that I thought would look fun next to each other, and colors that I thought would look good with a gray border. So I'm gonna do a square each day, and I'm gonna join them as I go. So I did a little sample here a couple weeks ago just to see how it would look, and I dig it. I really dig it. So this is what I'm doing. For this blanket, I actually went to Joann's, and I'm using their Big Twist Value yarns. The reason I chose that is because I've used it before, and it's thinner than the Loops and Threads Soft Classic Acrylic. It is thinner, not a whole lot, but a little bit. And they have a whole different color palette. They have a ton of colors. So do these guys, but tons of colors, and really they had bright, vibrant colors. So I did the whole same thing again, right? I started from the beginning. I already know where I live. I already know how to look up my temperature, and now it's going to be future temperatures, so I don't have them yet. But I knew kind of my ranges that I would need. So I just went to Joann. I actually did it on their website, and I went through and looked at what colors do I like and think are fun, and I just ordered them. I ordered a box of yarns from Joann. I didn't at the time I was ordering know what colors I would want for the border, so I ordered like a couple different shades of gray and even a black and a stark white, and I just started playing around. And this is what I have come to. So I made almost exactly the same little reference sheet for 2025. And let me just show you the colors to start, because that's probably what you're curious about. So this is my border color, and the lighting is a little funky, but all of these colors are fairly bright. Some of them are neons, not all of them, but they're pretty bright, and they all look good with gray. And what I did was I ordered all these colors and I laid them out on my table. I'll insert a couple pictures. And I just played around with the yarn. I had them on this table for like a week or two, and I just played around with them. I ordered more than I chose to use in the end, but I kind of played around with what colors look good next to each other, because temperatures typically don't jump, astronomically up and down. They go gradually. So I wanted colors that looked good next to each other sequentially. This one looks good next to this one. Well, let me get closer. This red, I liked the red, and I liked how it looked next to the blue. Well, as things change, what might look good with the blue? Well, I liked this orange. I liked the contrast. And then I just kind of sequentially looked at, if we're going to have to look at all these squares next to each other, let's see how we want it to work out. What I also now know from past experience from doing it this year is those extreme ends, the over 100 degrees, the below freezing, they don't happen that frequently. The most frequently used colors you're going to have are kind of in the middle of your spectrum. So I chose the colors I liked the most kind of here in the middle, knowing I'm not going to use these outside colors as often. And in fairness, this green, I don't 100% love it. It's a very traditional green. It's called Varsity Green. I don't love it that much, and I don't love this red that much. This is going to be my below freezing color for the year, and it doesn't actually get below freezing here for the high very frequently. But overall, I really like this little palette. I also wanted to use more yarn this year, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 colors this year instead of the 12, I think, or 13 last year. So I had to shrink down my temperature ranges to accommodate all these yarns. So for this guy, I had 6-degree temperature ranges. For this one, I have 4-degree temperature ranges. So before, my first color above freezing was 33 to 38 degrees. For this one, it's 33 to 36. So that allows me to squeeze more colors in to my range. So that's what I did. They're really bright, they're really vibrant. They're not all of them, like I said, but these are really kind of bright, fun colors. I think they're all gonna look good with this gray border. They're gonna look fun next to each other. And it's just gonna be a little bit more entertaining. This other one that I've done this year is great and perfect and just a little more muted. So this year, we're gonna liven it up a little bit. Okay? Do you feel overwhelmed? Don't. I wanted this video to be pretty comprehensive. Like I mentioned in the beginning, the only thing I'm not doing in this video to not make it super duper ultra long feature length film is I'm not going to do my tutorial in this video of how to make a granny square. So if you're totally into this concept but you're like, I don't even know how to make a granny square, check the description, watch that video. Okay? I think that the granny square is one of the easiest ways to start crocheting. If you've never crocheted before and you're watching this video, there's a billion different things you're about to learn. But one of the challenges for beginners is getting consistency from row to row. If you do a standard crochet blanket, you're going row to row, kind of from the bottom up. And people have a hard time when they're starting keeping consistent tension and keeping the same size with their stitches, which will result in one row that might be looser or longer and another row that might be tighter. And it makes, you can see that when you're doing it, and that's fine. We all do that in the beginning. But it's not a very good beginner-friendly thing if you're brand new to crochet to say, I don't even know how to crochet and I'm going to do a gigantic blanket like that. The other thing is people drop stitches, they lose stitches, and the edges of the blanket can become inconsistent, and you don't want to have to pull out your whole blanket and start over. And sometimes if you're new, you might not even understand what you did wrong, and it's annoying. With a little granny square, there's 3 stitches you need to learn. You need to learn how to do a slip stitch, you need to learn how to do a chain, and you need to learn how to do double crochet. And you need to know those anyway. Those are foundational, fundamental stitches, and that's it. For the most part, these are just double crochets over and over and over. And it's very easy, it's very meditative, it's very repetitive. And if you mess up one round, you don't have that many stitches. Maybe by the end of your whole month, if you're doing 1 square for each month, you might have to pull back a little bit. But it's really easy to see if you've made a mistake and to correct it. Trust me, once you've made a couple of these, it becomes second nature. And I'm not to brag because I'm not an amazing crocheter, but I don't even really have to look at these as I'm doing them. Like I can watch TV and you can just feel it. It's like typing. If you're a good typist, you don't have to look at your hands as you're typing. You might glance down occasionally, but you don't have to. And it's almost like that with these. I can just feel it and I don't have to think about it. So, highly recommend this for beginners. You don't even have to worry about chains and counting and consistency and even edges and all of that. Just start with a granny square. If you've never crocheted before, trust me, you're gonna get really good at it. If you have mastered these, you'll know how to double crochet, and then you can suddenly single crochet and half double crochet and treble crochet because you are so good at the double crochet. And you do a little bit of chaining in the beginning and you do slip stitches, and I believe everyone who wants to learn how to crochet should start with granny squares. Okay? You heard it here first. Maybe not first, but that's my take. Thank you guys if you stuck around through this whole video. I hope you found it helpful, and please leave me feedback below in the comments, because if I forgot something, I will answer your questions or put it into the comments. I wanted to cover everything that I thought was important. Maybe I missed something. I didn't talk at all, I just glanced over here about crochet hooks. And I'm doing that on purpose because it depends on your yarn. So if you choose your yarn first, then you can figure out what type of crochet hook you need later. So for my blanket, I use the Loops and Threads Soft Classic Acrylic and a 6mm crochet hook. This is the Clover Amour 6mm crochet hook. This has been like an additional finger attached to my hand all year long. For the Big Twist value yarn, it's a little thinner. I did these samples with a 5mm crochet hook, and this is perfect. This is exactly what I want. If it's totally customizable. So if you have never really crocheted before and you don't even know what size you need, your yarn skein will tell you. It's not always perfect because you might want a looser, more drapey project, or you might want something tighter, and you can adjust those by having a bigger or a smaller hook. But your skein will give you a pretty good guide, and in fact with the Big Twist value, it tells me right here. So these are knitting needles, this is a crochet hook, and it tells me we recommend you use a 5mm hook, which is exactly what I'm doing. With the loops and threads, soft classic acrylic, it tells me that I should use a 5.5mm crochet hook. I used a 6 and I like it. You can try them all out and see what you like the best. It's up to you. Okay, the final thing I'll say before I show you a little sneak peek of my 2024 blanket is it's easy when you're doing 12 squares to figure out how to join 12 squares. How do you join 365 or more? You'll have to do a little bit of playing around with that because it depends on the dimensions that you want. I cheated a little bit. I've been playing around a lot lately with ChatGPT. ChatGPT is my new best friend. So you can type it into Google, you can put it in a calculator, you can ask ChatGPT to create something for you based on the dimensions that you want. What I wanted was a perfect rectangle. I didn't want any gaps, and I didn't really want to do border squares or anything like that. So I just asked ChatGPT, like, how can I make a rectangle out of 365 granny squares plus the least amount possible to make it a rectangle? And it actually works out pretty perfectly. ChatGPT told me that I need a blanket that is 21 rows with 18 squares per row. That's going to give me 378 squares. And what that works out to is 1 square per day with I'm going to do one solid gray square between each month. That will visually show me the separation between each month, and it'll also create a perfect rectangle. 378 squares. So if you want to do this guy, just do what I said. 378 squares, 21 rows with 18 squares per row, and do 1 square between each month. And there you go, there's your rectangle. But you can do it however you like. You can do it however you like. Use your resources and create whatever tickles your fancy. Okay, I've talked a lot. I need to get some water. And I need a new battery because my battery is about to die. So let me switch out my battery, and I'm going to go upstairs and grab you my work in progress of my 2024 blanket, and I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. Okay, be right back. You guys, this is my unofficial sneak peek of my 2024 Granny Square temperature blanket. It is massive, and it's currently a work in progress, like I mentioned, because I still have to connect the last 3 months. So this is only 9 months, but I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of a sneak peek. This blanket is huge, so definitely take that into consideration. This is my joining yarn because I'm joining all of them with one continuous join, which is really nice. This is the color Mushroom, which is kind of a deeper off-white color. This was what I started with when I started making granny squares, and this is what I chose to join all my squares with. So it's still connected to my blanket here because I'm not done. But let me see if I can try to give you guys a little bit of a reveal. I might have to only do, oh my god, it's so big. It's heavy too. Check this out, guys. Can you see? It's so big. Let me try to show you this way. I'm going to do a proper reveal when this is done, which will be at the very beginning of January. So subscribe to the channel, please, and then you'll see my official reveal. But can you see I have 3 squares per row. Oops, I'm pulling out stitches, that's fine. And I have 3 rows, so there's 3 months. Oh my god, it's heavy. There's 3 months below it. And 3 months under that. Can you guys see? I'm going to do a proper reveal soon. But here you can see how 4 squares, sorry for the scratching on the microphone, how 4 squares join together. So a little border on each square, and I connect them as I go. And I really love this technique. So I didn't know how I was going to join them until about a month ago when I got started. I just started making the squares, and you can do that too. Worry about joining them later. And if you have no idea until the very end, don't worry, that's fine too. So that's all I'm going to show you guys for now, because I want to do a proper reveal when it's done. But I have one little comment about this joining method. So give me a second here to move this massive thing out of the way. You really want to consider the size before you get started. Oh, goodness. I love that blanket. I'm obsessed. It's big, but I love it. Linked below in the description, if you want to use the joining method that I used, which I highly recommend, is a video by Bee Hooked Crochet. It's titled, "If You Hate Joining Granny Squares, Try This." I'll link it below. I'm following that. It's really easy to do. You can take your square as it is, do a border around it, and then just continue on to the next square. You'll create a border around the next square and join it as you go, and then you'll connect to your next one, join it as you go, and create a border, and it's perfect. And you can do it if you only have 12 squares for your whole blanket, or trust me when I say, because I tried, you can do it with little daily squares too. What you'll have when you start, if you're doing a daily square, you have to do one row at a time. So you almost like start from one end and you go all the way to the other end. So if you're following my method, you'll have this long sort of chain of 18 squares that are only connected on one side. And that'll be your first 18 days of the year. And then when you get to the end, imagine this is the 18th day. When you have your 19th day, you'll connect it down here. That's actually inaccurate. You have to kind of visualize how you want your square to go. So if this is day 1 over here and day 18, then you probably have day 19 over here and day 36 down here. So you may need to make your next 18 days first so that you can connect day 36 to down here. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, don't panic, don't worry. You have the entire year to figure it out, and her video explains it a whole lot better than me. But once you have your second row of squares ready, you'll connect this guy, and then you'll move in the other direction and connect over here and over here and over here, and then you'll move on. So you connect them all as you're going, and then at the very end you get to your last square, wherever that is, and then you just do a border around the whole thing and you're done. It's very easy actually, and it's no more complicated than the granny square itself because it's the same, right? The border is just another round, and all you're doing when you join them is you're slip stitching them together. So it's very, very easy to follow. Do not be overwhelmed. Like I said, this is the best join as you go video I've seen, and I've watched dozens of them. This is the best and the easiest and the clearest, and I highly recommend it. I'm not going to do a tutorial on how to do that because hers is so good. So I'll show you how I make granny squares and granny rectangles and then go ahead and watch her teach you how to join them together. Okay? Okay guys, that's it. We've reached the end. I really sincerely hope that you found this video helpful. Like I mentioned, I started crocheting about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and before I got into it, I started by watching tons and tons of really amazing crochet people on YouTube. I have my favorite people that I watch every single video that they post. And as I've started posting, even as a beginner, this community has been so nice, so welcoming, so friendly. It is the nicest group of people on YouTube. Before I started crocheting, most of my videos were about houseplants. If you like that, definitely subscribe because there's a ton of houseplant related videos too. Great community. The houseplant people can be very competitive and it's a little bit of a tricky community sometimes. The crochet, the yarn community, the fiber community has just been so amazing. So I wanted to give back because I've gained so much from the community. So I really hope that you found this video helpful, that it maybe inspired an idea in you. You can take the things that I've talked about and turn them into anything. You could do one giant square for the entire year. You could say, I'm only using one color because it represents every temperature range for the whole year. Do whatever you want. It's so fun to be able to take an idea and turn it into your own. If you found this video helpful, like I said, the best things you can do to support me and the channel are to give the video a thumbs up, to subscribe to the channel, and to comment below. More than anything, I want this to be the beginning of a conversation. I would love to see what you guys want to do or have done in the past. So comment below and let's talk about it. And there's a few other ways that you can follow us as well and kind of continue the conversation, because with YouTube comments, you're not able to post your own pictures of your works and things like that. So you can definitely follow me on Instagram. I would love if you tagged me in prior projects you've done or your progress through 2025. It would almost be fun to do like a collaborative year-long thing. I don't know, but you can tag me on Instagram or send me your photos or your questions. All of that will be linked below. And we have a Facebook group, Nick and Andrew Urban Farm Boys. We have a Facebook group and it's really fun. It's Facebook, so you can post whatever you want. Pictures, videos, questions, links, I don't care. I'm not even particularly concerned if you're kind of promoting your own crochet business or shop, as long as you're not spamming the entire page so nobody can find anything else. Show everybody what you're up to, patterns, things like that. We have chat groups. I've had lots of really fun chats with a lot of you guys on the Facebook page, so you can join that as well. I'll put all of the links and ways you can connect with us below. We also have a PO box, and I love postcards. I've gotten so many postcards from you guys from all over, places you live, places you've traveled, and that's really fun. So if you did want to send us a postcard, I love that. And then periodically I'll do a video where I show all the postcards from where you guys are from. So check the description. It's got all of the links you could ever need. I really appreciate you guys spending the time with me today, and I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for welcoming me into the community. And if you're new, buckle up, because you're never going to have any free time again, because you're going to be so obsessed with everything you're about to do and learn and discover. So hope everyone's having a great day. And until the next video, take care, guys.